for my presentation, I would like to talk to you about 3 important reports that came out in March and why they are so crucial to the peace work that we need to be doing. So the first report is the 6th assessment report that came out from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change on March 20th. And the synthesis report is 30 pages for policymakers, and then they have larger documents that accompany it. But the 30-page document, I want to encourage everybody to read. And it is the report that compiles the latest science on climate change and what we need to do for climate adaptation and mitigation. And the headline message is that we need urgent climate action to secure a livable planet and a livable future. And in that report, there is this chart, and I just want to spend a minute on it because I think that it's really important. I put in this chart 4 arrows, and the first arrow that I want you to look at is on the it's on the far left, and it shows you the legend. And as we get hotter, from 3.5 to 4 degrees, it gets a darker red to a purple. So that's the legend. And then up at the top, that second arrow shows you where we're at right now. At about 2020, 2030, we're at almost 2 degrees of global mean temperature. And in the past decade, they said that, this is the hottest decade from 2011 to 2020. It's the hottest decade. And in this decade, we're all very well aware of what we've been facing, not just here in Canada, but around the world. A heat dome in British Columbia, flooding on both coasts, wildfires burning in Alberta and British Columbia and in northern Ontario, terrible smoke from these fires, and drought and desertification that we're seeing. We're seeing on the prairies, for instance. And then the third arrow that I want you to have a look at is the arrow where it shows that by 2100, it's going to potentially be 3.5 to 4 degree warming. And then the bottom arrow it shows you a woman 70 years old. So this is really the lifetime of our children. I have 2 boys, 16 and 18. And over the next 70 years until the end of this century, the IPCC thinks that we are on very high likelihood of warming to 4 degrees based on the current emissions trajectory that we're on. Folks, this is very serious because at 1.1 degrees of warming, I've just explained to you, what we're facing with climate change. At 4 degrees, they're talking about maybe an unlivable, parts of the world being unlivable. So this is a absolute climate emergency. And this was the report that was released March 20th. And so what they said in this report is that we need rapid and urgent action. We need to drastically cut emissions, especially in this decade to 2030, to when we need to meet the Paris Agreement. We need to scale up ambition. We need to spend more on climate financing to get that kind of climate resilient infrastructure that we need. We need urgent action in all dimensions. So that came out March 20th. And this is the World Bank data that shows you Canadian greenhouse gas emissions over the past 60 years. So you can see that it has just risen dramatically. We emit about 740 million tons of greenhouse gases every year. Canada has failed to meet every single climate target under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So our emissions continue to go up. We're going in the wrong direction. Now, a week later, our federal budget came out, and it did not attend at all to this climate emergency. It was entitled the budget. Oops, a federal budget to have a strong economy, to have a strong economy for the middle class, and to have a healthy future. But really, friends, what it is a war budget. The department that got the most spending is the Department of National Defense. The federal government announced a $55 billion increase over the next 20 years. So we're going to be spending more, $38 billion more to meet our NORAD commitments. We're going to be spending more for NATO, and we're going to be spending a lot more to buy new critical weapon systems. And then in this federal budget, they had a special spotlight on Canada's planned purchase of Lockheed Martin F-35. So we're going to be spending $19 billion to buy 88 new fighter jets over this crucial period, over this next decade, while we need to dramatically reduce emissions. Instead, Canada is going to be investing in a new fleet of fossil fuel-powered fighter jets, and that the life cycle cost that is not included in the federal budget is estimated to be at least $70 billion. But this federal budget also announced that we are going to be spending an additional $7 billion for new military infrastructure for these fighter jets. That means new runways and hangars in the Arctic, as well as $6 billion for new missiles. And then in this federal budget that is supposedly to help Canada create a strong middle class and a healthy future, it talks about prolonging the war in the Ukraine. So it says that we're going to be spending more money for so-called military aid to Ukraine, and more money to prop up the Zelensky government. Now, our federal budget mentions Ukraine 69 times, and it only mentions climate change 45 times. There is more money and there's more attention in our federal budget on prolonging a war in Ukraine instead of trying to bring about peace and act on climate. At this level of military spending, Canada is currently ranked 13th highest in the world for military spending. So this is according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. And it shows you it in US dollars at about $25 billion US, but that's converted to $35 billion Canadian in Canadian dollars. And if you look at the NATO Defense Expenditures Report, you can see that over the past decade, Canadian military spending has increased 70% to now $35 billion in Canadian. And then it's going to increase even further according to our federal budget. So, it's really problematic. And this is again from the World Bank data, and it shows our military spending over the past 6 decades. And like our climate emissions, our carbon emissions going up, our military spending as well has tracked the same way. It's just dramatically gone up. The third report that came out in March that I want to bring to your attention that's important is CIPRI's arms transfer report for the past year. And it showed that Canada is ranked 16th highest in the world for arms transfers, for weapons exports. We're sending weapons not only to Ukraine, but to Bahrain, to Israel, to the US, to the UAE, and of course, to Saudi Arabia. And what Global Affairs also has admitted in their latest report on arms transfers that our weapons exports in the past 2 years have increased by 30%, and they're going to increase even more because of this war in Ukraine. So this past week, our Defense Minister, Anita Anand, here you have her announcing a new package of arms exports to Ukraine. And she says, we're going to continue to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Well, here are some details about this latest weapons package. We are going to be sending $56 million worth of assault weapons and assault rifles and machine guns to Ukraine. I mean, this is to kill people. $56 million. There's not, and we're spending so much money on weapons and prolonging this war. We're not spending a dollar to try to end it and have peace negotiations. So we need to ask ourselves, what is Canada really doing with this war in Ukraine that's killing not just Russian soldiers, but it's killing Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian civilians and children. You know, what Canada is doing around the world with all of this military spending and with all of these weapons exports is war making, is war making. And so unsurprisingly, Canada is not a leader in UN peace support operations and peacekeeping. According to the UN Peacekeeping Office, these are the latest statistics that show Canada is ranked 70th in the world for peacekeeping. Very, very low. We have only 58 soldiers that are wearing the UN blue helmet. Now, this is out of a Canadian military force of 85,000 soldiers and reserves. We've only got 58. We're only ranked 70th for peacekeeping in the world. And look at how low the United States is. I mean, they're even farther than us. They're so low on the in the ranking. They're ranked 77th with only 36 soldiers on UN peace support operations. Clearly, what we're doing, friends, is war making all over the world. But I want to tell you that just even on one NATO operation that we have underway right now in Latvia, Canada has 1,000 soldiers. We are leading NATO's enhanced battle group in Latvia, right on Russia's border. I was in Latvia in November, and I went to Camp Adasi, where Canada is leading this multinational NATO operation. And when I was there with my sign, No to NATO, Yes to Peace and Cooperation, I could hear the gunfire and the shooting and the shelling and all of the tank exercise that they have in the forest. It was very noisy. And I delivered a letter to the commander, and I said that I opposed this, and that we should be engaged in peace building, not in war making, not preparing for war with Russia. We should be ending what we're doing in Ukraine, because at that base, we also have an electronic warfare unit that is operating with no parliamentary oversight, no public oversight. We have no idea what this electronic warfare unit is doing right now. Right now in Latvia. And I want to show you this satellite image of Camp Adasi in Latvia. And it shows you that that the forest, from all of the tank exercise and all of the war training that they're doing, the combat training, it has totally destroyed the forest. It is felled this important forest in Latvia. You can see all of the scarring of the land. And the scarring of the land. And just to remind you that forests are so important for us to protect because they're a crucial carbon sink. And then I want to tell you that NATO has these two slides that show you all of the troops and all of the missile systems and all of the tanks that are along Russia's border throughout the Baltics down to Eastern Europe. And you can see, you know, thousands of these soldiers and all of these weapon systems right on Russia's border. And then this is a slide that shows you all of the fighter aircraft and the bombers that are along Russia's borders. And Canada is participating in this. We are sowing division and hostility, and in escalating tension with Russia. And what are we doing? What are we preparing for? Well, when I was on my 1-month tour of Russia and Eastern Europe, I went to Finland, Latvia, Poland, and Romania. I talked with hundreds of people. And what I realized was that there are all of these family and friendship connections between everyone, including with Russia. And that what we should be doing is we need to be disbanding NATO, and we need to start peace building and healing and restoring relationships with one another. And that's what we should be doing. So I just want to end by showing you a couple of slides from my trip here in St. Petersburg with a Russian peace activist, No to NATO, Yes to Peace and Cooperation. In Finland, they're very opposed to to joining NATO because they're very close to the Russians. They have many family and friends there. They felt it was totally anti-democratic that they were forced to join NATO. And then I want to bring to your attention in my last minute some important campaigns and events taking place that I hope that you will promote and that you will engage in. The International Peace Bureau is leading their annual global campaign against military spending from April 13th to May 10th. You can go to the ipb.org website to find out more. Please share this on social media and please try to do something. Contact your member of parliament and say we need to reduce military spending, invest in the climate emergency and poverty and affordable housing and all of these other pressing environmental and social needs that we have. I also want to bring to your attention, and I want you to help share the word about this important event far and wide. On May 3rd, that's a Wednesday, the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute is having this fantastic webinar with Dr. Jeffrey Sachs and Dr. Ivan Kachanovsky on the path to peace in Ukraine. Please attend and please let everybody know they need to attend this. If you are looking for a great holiday this summer, come to Ottawa on May 31st. We are going to be doing a protest of CANSEC. It's the largest weapons fair in North America. Join us and peace activists from across the city, across Ontario. We're going to be converging on the capital and saying, shut down CANSEC. And then finally, I want to let you know that I am going to be attending and I'm going to be representing VOW and WILP at this International Summit for Peace in Ukraine in Vienna. And I'm going to try to take petitions and I'm going to come back to Canada and I'm going to spread the word about why we need to stop sending weapons and why we need to have peace in Ukraine. So I want to let you know about that. And I hope that Glenn will join me from Winnipeg in Vienna for this. And then I just leave the slide up and maybe we have a couple of minutes to talk about some of the things that we could do together, to take action. And so I just want to urge you to contact your member of parliament, ask for a meeting, ask your senator to have a meeting. We've been doing this at WILP and VOW. We've had a number of meetings. We just met with Canada's UN ambassador in New York, Bob Ray, on Wednesday. This Wednesday coming up, we're going to be having a Zoom meeting with the NDP defense critic, Lindsay Matheson. We need to get this information to our elected representatives. We need to let them know that we want peace and we want a cut in military spending. I also just want to quickly bring to your attention as I close that we also need to speak out on this terrible new Indo-Pacific strategy. We don't want a war with Russia. So we need common security, we need common prosperity, we need peace to make that happen. Thanks everybody so much for inviting me to your meeting. Thanks for your work. Let's continue to work together and stand in solidarity.